If you're sitting to quorum, but if you don't count as quorums if you're on Zoom, but if you have like a disability and you're on Zoom, then.
And you don't.
How about I moderate that?
Yeah.
All right, everyone on Zoom, we're gonna get started very shortly.
Okay, everyone, we want to get going because,
Do you have a microphone?
okay.
Roll around.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first land use meeting of 2024 for Community Board 8. I want to really thank everyone for coming out tonight. The temperatures are quite chilly, and hopefully the topic is not as chilly as that. We're here tonight to talk about the City of Yes for economic development or economic opportunity. We are joined tonight by George James. Thank you again, George, for putting together such a great memorandum to help us get through it. We are going to use the same methodology we used back in December. Essentially, no formal motions from the floor, an informal straw poll. We have quite a few proposals to get through. And we're gonna start where I promised we would, which is meaning that we're gonna try to keep this meeting to 2 hours and under. And to try to help us be cognizant of how much time is elapsing, we've got this wonderful clock right here. So everybody can look at it. Unfortunately, it doesn't start at 2 hours. It only starts at 1 hour. So we'll reset when we get down to 0. And you'll know that we're halfway there. Or maybe let's even think more positively that we'll be more than halfway there. We also have the gambling tax amendment to talk about. I want to talk about that tonight because the borough board is going to vote on that tomorrow. And I want to be able to weigh in on behalf of this community board district in that regard. I think that's really important as well. So without further ado, I think we'll go to proposal. We sort of went a little bit out of order. And so tonight, our first topic is reactivation of storefronts. That's our first proposal. Does anybody want to start the discussion?
Are you handing out the sheets like we did last time?
Oh, we did not bring sheets for everybody to track.
Well,
I guess I'd hoped that everybody would have kept their note device.
no.
No.
Well, I mean, I don't know how it helps. It says reactivate storefronts. It says yes, no, and modification. So that's where we are. So essentially, the first one is, I'll just say it. Currently, zoning allows businesses in R5 through R7 districts to reoccupy vacant space, regardless of how long the non-conforming storefront has been empty. The issue is that R1 through R4, RE through R10, and historic districts are excluded from these provisions, meaning commercial spaces in these areas that are vacant for more than 2 years are not permitted to be reoccupied, contributing to long-term vacancies. So the proposed revision is to expand the existing provisions to all residence districts and historic districts. Anybody want to weigh in? Yes? No? Maybe? Go ahead, Russell.
So I would suggest we do yes. And seconded. And
Can
so
you speak up, please, Russell?
Yeah, sure. So I'm saying, I think we should do yes. I think the reason is, these are spaces that have already been used commercially in the past. I think the fact that they are, I understand it's structured largely for commercial uses, which makes it hard to repurpose them for residential purposes. So you're not really, for practical purposes, actually losing residential space. All you're doing is making it easier to fill space that's currently been left vacant because of this kind of weird, thing in the rules. And the other thing is, as I understand, it's likely going to have a big impact on our district anyway, just because of the nature of the work we work with prongs in terms of which districts are affected.
You said it will not have much.
Yeah, isn't that right? Because of the districts that we have in our district, does this mean to change that many, or is that?
Yes, it does.
It does change most of the.
Yeah, historic district.
Well, historic districts and also, most of the non-conforming commercial uses are in the RAB. And the RAB has the 2-year time, so this would affect.
Okay, well, so scrap that part of what I said, irrespective of that. I still think it's a good idea for the section.
Okay, Judy, you had your hand up?
I was just going to second.
Okay. Anybody else? Cos?
Oh, the question.
Oh, Anthony's on.
Well, is it my
That's
hand
Jean, or
or
are we just raising?
Well, I think we should have just a little bit of a discussion.
You have two hands up on the,
Okay, on Zoom?
Yeah.
Who is it?
you have Elaine Walsh and Anthony Cohen.
Okay, well, Elaine Walsh from the public then.
Elaine, you should be able to unmute.
Got it. Good evening and congratulations, Valerie. It's my first time being able to. Mazel tov.
Elaine,
Let
we
me-
cannot hear you, so give me 1 second to figure out why.
What?
Elaine, now try.
Get me? What happened?
Um,
Um,
we're not able to hear you.
well, that's,
Elaine, we're not able to hear you. Let me figure that out. Because I can hear her on there.
you want to try a different person?
No, I just need to, yeah, sure, Anthony, unmute and see if we can hear you. But I am gonna guess.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Um. Should be coming out.
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Always something new.
I hear you guys, if that's any comfort.
Go ahead, Anthony. Oh, or can we hear Elaine first?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Elaine.
All right, Anthony, go ahead.
Okay. I think that because these old non-conforming uses, 2 points. One is that I think it's a bad idea. I've seen lots of ground floor, formerly commercial spaces, and especially in our district, excuse me, converted to residential over time. In all of the side streets, there used to be restaurants, there used to be this, there used to be that. They went away, this is years ago, and were replaced with apartments. And there doesn't seem to be any reason to encourage additional commercial development where we don't really need it. And I think that while it is good to note that a proposal may or may not have an effect on us, we are in fact part of a larger city. And I think that the detrimental effect in a lot of other communities make it really important for us to also resist what is basically not necessarily a good idea. If you can't find another tenant within 2 years, then you should convert it to residential because, gee willikers, there's a big need for apartments. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Can we get Elaine now?
Yeah, let's get Elaine. Elaine, would you unmute? I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
are you hearing me now? Yes. I just wanted to comment that I'm opposed to this proposal because we have seen in commercial areas where they have kept something vacant and then wanted to reuse it, which impacted negatively residential areas. I'll give you an old story. 80th Street and 3rd Avenue was a storage facility. Back then, Toys R Us wanted to build there, which would have impacted a residential community. What we were able to show was that the site was vacant for 2 years or more and therefore could not. And now we have housing there. We have commercial on the ground floor. So I think that 2 years is sufficient for landowners to find a tenant and not be greedy. Thank you.
Thanks. I know, Kaz, will you indulge me with holding off on calling the board? Okay, thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, I'm opposed to this as well. Also because of its effect in historic districts. That's something we do have a lot of up here, although I echo Anthony's remarks. So even though we're talking about our district, we do have to be mindful. All of these proposals, all facets of City of Yes, are all having to do with all of the 5 boroughs. We should be mindful of that and also mindful of the fact that what exists as a condition in our neighborhood today may not be the same thing that exists going down the road, whether it be a year or 10 years. But, I think to play around with the historic district and make something available just as of right is a very dangerous thing to do. And I would like to keep things as they are. I don't see any particular benefit to this.
Okay, George, does it really affect the historic district or just the special district?
So, the way the current exemption works is that it applies to R5 through R7 districts that are not in historic districts.
I just
So
wanted-
currently, the rules apply to all historic districts the same regardless of zoning district.
Okay, thank you.
So this applies to the historic district though.
Yes,
Yes.
so currently it does, and this change would make it not apply. to
Exactly,
historic.
All
yeah.
right, Abraham.
Just a question for George, on where it says that currently, things more than 2 years are not permitted to be reoccupied. Is that ever, or is there a process for commercial use to be replanted?
No, that would mean that the right to occupy it with a commercial use would be suspended. And it would have to be occupied with a community facility use, like a doctor's office or a residence.
Okay, anybody else? Elizabeth first.
The 2-year time limit is actually a good hammer on pricing. Because if you can't rent it within 2 years, what that probably means is you are asking too high a rent. And so if you can simply continue to wait for your tenant and wait for your price, you're simply encouraging longer term vacancy and supporting higher prices. So if you really want to rent it, that 2-year limit really gives the landlord incentive to cut his prices. I think that's good. And if he's not, if it can't rent at all, for whatever reason, not willing to cut his prices, then it should go residential where we have.
Okay, just two more. Marco?
I think the first question that we have to ask, reactivate what? We have a vacancy rate of 14. I know very well in housing, it's good to have a vacancy rate of 5. Commercial is usually double because they allow to create business. So if we have a vacancy rate of 14, why do you have to reactivate something that is within the limits of the vacancy rate reasonable, required to have a different type of business? I think it's wrong, that is a proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Costa.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that depend on what the vacancy is? If it's a big open space, to convert that to residential, nobody would do it. So it's gonna stay vacant for the next 20 years. So doesn't it depend on what was there before and what will go there?
Well, I don't think it's dependent on the use because it could have started out as a doctor's office, been empty for 2 years, then become a restaurant, then become, under the new rules, a nightclub.
But to convert back to residential, an open area restaurant is a major expense that who would undertake?
Understood. Understood. Okay, I think we're at the end of our,
I'm sorry. So you're saying, but wouldn't there still be some rules about what it can be? On Park Avenue, it can't be a nightclub, am I right?
George?
So a nightclub would be use group 6, and if you had a reactivation of that kind of space on Park Avenue, there aren't very many of them. But yes, it would be allowed, it would be permitted. A nightclub would be permitted, meaning a place, an eating and drinking establishment with music and dance.
But within the 2 years, you could still have had the nightclub.
With this other changes that are being proposed, yes,
Right, but not this specifically.
that's right.
That's.
George, can you restate that, please? The 2 years in and out of the 2 years, restate what you just said.
Okay, so, I think what I just said, is that if you have a space like this on Park Avenue, it could convert to an eating and drinking establishment. Currently, it can currently do that right now. Under these new changes, you can have music and dancing as well, in that establishment within 2 years. But if it's vacant for 2 years on Park Avenue, you can't do it.
Can I just follow, because I'm misunderstanding something. I was under the impression that when there was a use group in a certain premises, that that use group had to be continued at the next rental.
It has to be that use group or lower.
Right,
So-
so that's what this is changing though, correct?
No, it's essentially part of all the changes is that many of these uses become use group 6. So restaurants, nightclubs, it's all use group 6, which is the lowest intensity commercial use.
So that's for the purposes of this plan in City of Yes. It's because you're incorporating more than what was in the original use group. It's because the use group is expanding.
That is correct.
Okay,
That is
all right, I
exactly
just
correct.
wanted to clarify.
Yes.
And because the use group is expanding, if you lift the limits on this, you've expanded the possibilities, correct?
That is correct,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay, wait, Sharon hasn't spoken yet. Go ahead, Sharon.
George, that picture.
Can't
right
hear you,
there-
Sharon.
Yeah, sure. That picture right there that we're looking at, George, what is the likelihood of it being converted to housing?
Right.
It's very expensive to convert these to housing. I think it's more likely that they would be converted to a community facility like a daycare or a doctor's office. Because they're gonna be much better suited for that kind of occupancy or dentist, that kind of stuff. The kind of stuff you see on Park Avenue, right? That's a residential district. And if you have this sort of ground floor facility in a residential zone, it's more likely to be occupied by a community facility, though, as Anthony said, sometimes they are reoccupied by residents.
Yeah, because I find that a lot of the buildings on Park Avenue, some of the lobby level entrances where you normally would have a doctor's office are indeed being converted into larger apartments. So I've seen that happen a great deal across the board. But you're saying that for something like this, it would be relatively very expensive.
All things being equal, yes. I mean, it's much more expensive to convert because you don't have a kitchen, you don't have a bathroom, and it has to do with egress. You have to make certain you have proper routes of egress. It's expensive to take care of it. It's not impossible, but a doctor's office is a much easier switch.
Can we go to Alita?
Yes, Alita, and you have Billy and Narita
Okay.
next. So Alita, you can unmute.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask if you can hear me. I'm going to assume you can. These things can't be read in a vacuum. All of these proposals together seem to suggest that the idea for the city is to eliminate zoning and make everything uniform and as welcoming to any kind of business as anyone who leases space or wants to put in a business can do. And therefore, I'm opposed to this because we don't know what the consequences are. We're not reading them together because there is just simply too much to be able to get through. It also only deals with part of the problem because someone who leases commercial space had told me that they can't lower rent because they'll be in default with bankers. They can't, there are tax benefits to keeping spaces vacant. So we don't know what's going to happen. And to Elizabeth Rose's point, if you rent and if you keep a place vacant and then someone comes along and wants to put in an amusement park or some other kind of amusement and pay a lot of rent, well, bingo, there you go. So I just think that this is like many, 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 or if not all of them, just a problem. Thank you.
Billy?
Billy, you're up.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. So apologies that this was asked, but because we're speculating a lot about what policy puts what price pressure on landlords, was there any evidence that in the districts where the zoning regulations were relaxed, which I guess was the R5 to R7 districts, that vacancy rates were lower, George, or any other evidence that we can point to better understand what the impact of expanding this would be?
City planning has not released any information on that. I can tell you, I do a lot of work in East Harlem, and the mid blocks of East Harlem are zone R7, so the exception applies. And you sometimes see some very long-term vacancies. As they wait for, there's one on 116th Street that's been vacant for 8 years, as they wait for reoccupancy. And so it's It's kind of interesting. I can't say definitively, I can say only anecdotally, that it seems to, it seems that people wait. You know, if you have the commercial space, you wait for a tenant.
Okay, all I would say, and I guess we're just sort of informally kind of voting these up and down, but if we ever were to put a resolution up on this stuff, I think it'd be good to ask city planning to provide some data or to study this. Because I'm genuinely pretty conflicted about what would actually happen if we expanded this proposal to other districts. So I guess that's my 2 cents on it. Thanks.
Rita Popper.
Rita? And Rita, I'm asking.
Rita's the last one.
I am opposed to this. Because I think it makes people hold their property for 2 years empty. They get certain tax breaks, and then they will rent to anything and to anyone. And I really think that that really takes away a gestalt of us living in New York and without having to, trip over kids or things or whatever. This is a very unsound idea.
Okay,
Point of information, would this negate any existing prohibitions in certain side streets? Now currently, side street cannot have certain restaurants. This means that anything can be done anywhere in the city.
Oh, no, I mean, so if it's a residence district and it doesn't have a pre-existing use, well, then it stays a residence district and you can't put a commercial use in it. This is just what the pre-existing, or what some people call grandfathered uses. That's the only thing we're talking about.
So theoretically, you can't put a nightclub on Park Avenue.
Unless there is a pre-existing store or restaurant. There aren't very many, but there are a couple.
Yeah.
2 out of a million, that's pretty low percent.
Indeed.
okay.
Can I ask a point of information?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, very quickly. The way it is now, I'm trying to figure this out, and I didn't. The way it is now, so there's a flower shop on Park Avenue. If that one goes out, only a flower shop or something of that kind can go back within 2 years?
So
Because I don't know why somebody would purposely wait 2 years to rent something.
it would have to be some kind of store or restaurant. So
And after 2 years, it could be anything?
And no, after 2 years, it would have to be something that complies with the residential district, so either a residence or a doctor's office.
No,
or
if this passes.
Oh, if this passes, then it can, essentially, there's no time limit in it. Then it has to be a store or a restaurant, but they don't have to worry about the 2-year time limit.
And why would anybody wait 2 years to rent it, this idea that we'll hold it?
It has to do, it can have to do with the financing for the building. It can have to do with they're not getting the price they want, so they'd rather have it sit empty. There's a whole slew of reasons why. Okay, can we go back to Russell's, unless you have a point of information, Elizabeth?
I just want to say, we have 12 topics.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. Russell,
10 minutes per topic.
can you restate your motion and then we're gonna,
Yeah, it was just yes.
okay. Okay, so let's call the question. Okay, everyone voting yes, which would allow you to reactivate the storefront regardless of how much time has elapsed. Who's voting yes?
And for those on Zoom, go to your reactions icon and press the green check for yes, and press the red X for no.
Wait for yes now.
Okay, who's gonna count?
Sure.
I can count it.
Yes, you're the secretary, you can count them.
Do you want us, okay, 1, 2,
Not calling the roll.
No, we didn't count the roll the last time. It's a straw vote. We're gonna have the opportunity. All of this will be
Just keep your
listed in
hands
the
up.
final resolution.
Sorry.
12, 13, 14.
And then you had 4 yes on Zoom. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 members on Zoom.
So I put my.
I got so we have 14 yes.
Okay, who are the no's?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22.
Okay, so right now, we're a no on this. Okay, moving speedily along to approve.
Do you want to affirmatively vote no?
To make another resolution.
Well, it's a straw poll, so when this comes out, when we look at the resolution at the next meeting, it'll say, resolve, we're in favor of proposals, whatever they are, we're conditionally in favor of these, we're against these, and then we'll vote on it as a whole. Okay, here we go, proposal 2, simplifying the rules for business types allowed in commercial streets. Currently, commercial zoning districts that aim to foster similar retail environments often do not allow the same types of businesses. The issue is that common neighborhood retail businesses such as bicycle rental shops, movie theaters, mini golf face outdated restrictions on where they can locate. The proposal is to allow the same businesses to locate in C1 and C2 districts and in C4 through C7, creating a fix that strengthens the difference between local and regional commercial streets. Remove restrictions preventing particular uses in certain districts from occupying ground floor spaces. Anybody want to open it up? Make a motion?
Just give us a minute to digest. Or George, could you be able to give us?
All right, I'll let Elizabeth Rose start it off.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we should approve this.
Okay, and then you want to just speak to it?
Say disapprove?
No, approve.
Approve. Elizabeth's making a motion to approve it. Go ahead.
I think the distinction between local and regional is pretty amorphous. We are, cities of neighborhoods. There are lots of, I've never understood what was wrong with the movie theater that was a grandfathered non-conforming 2 blocks from my apartment. I don't get that. I certainly don't get why a bicycle rental shop could be around the corner from me, but not across the street from it. I'll agree that there are a lot of what's the practical impact here. I'll sign on.
Second.
Second, Marco?
Thank you. I reviewed the proposal and I saw this one was crossed out completely. So C2, C1 disappeared because will be under C2. C2 have serious problems, especially some the use group of NAS, especially the locations of city catering facilities. That is very attractive in our community. That creates serious problems of traffic. And to combine the two districts, C1 and C2, is wrong. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Michelle?
Yeah, I'm gonna take advantage of George James being here. Can you tell us the sort of the pros and cons of this as you see it?
Okay, so what this does is it combines C1 and C2 together, exactly as Marco said, it makes them all the same. Takes C4 through C4, C5, and C6 together and makes them all the same. And so now essentially we have 3 commercial districts: neighborhood commercial, central business district, and then C8, which is for like automotive and heavy commercial uses. So that it essentially we had essentially 6 buckets, and now we're making it 3 buckets instead. And here's my opinion, as somebody who lives in the neighborhood. I can't tell you where the differences are between C1 and C2 districts from my memory. I'd have to look at a zoning map, because everything that is allowed in the C2 district, everything allowed in a C1 district is also allowed in a C2 district. And so the lines blur. The lines completely blur when you're going down the street. And the example I used here was, I think it was First Avenue between 75th and 78th Street. On one side of the street it's C1 and the other side of the street it's C2, and you can't really tell between them. I think that this is, there are differences, Marco is right, there are some differences like catering facilities. movies, some things that create some crowds which are reserved for C2, but generally speaking, there's a lot of overlap between them. And this does simplify the zone. Likewise with C4, C5, and C6, there's some very minor distinctions there, especially between C4 and C6, and they're just getting rid of them and combining them all into a bigger bucket.
What about the C7?
So C7 is a brand new district. Well, actually, it exists now, but they're completely redefining it. And right now, it only exists in Coney Island. And they're going to redefine it as a new district that they will map in future, in the future. But it
Should we
doesn't
wait to
affect
get that, to that proposal, because that's part of the, later on. Okay, so do we have anybody?
Anthony and then Chuck Warren.
Okay, Anthony and then Chuck.
Okay, a couple of things. I think that if you look, as Marco suggests, at what is being crossed out, it's the difference between local retail and local service. And there is a substantial difference. Just because something is allowed in a C2 district doesn't mean that it should also be allowed in a C1 district. And I think the overarching argument that I feel very strongly about is that this is, I apologize to the fine people at city planning. This is a lazy man's way to rewrite the zoning. They're not looking at it hard. What they're trying to do is put yet another Band-Aid on top of a 60-year-old zoning resolution that no longer speaks to this city. There is no major effort to remap the districts. They just want to mush them together and have fewer of them, which is a good idea, but that doesn't solve the problems inherent in a 60-year-old document that barely reflected a 1960 city and certainly has no relation to the city of today or tomorrow.
Okay. Okay,
I
thank you,
oppose
Anthony.
this.
And Chuck.
Call a question.
Second. Okay. Elizabeth, what's your motion?
Motion is to approve.
Okay, all in favor?
And again, those on Zoom, use the green for yes. Yeah, the word carries.
Okay.
That's a yes.
This is a yes. Okay. Topic. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop the counting. Okay, right. Thank you, Secretary. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, topic 3, allowing manufacturing.
Didn't take the no vote.
Okay, anybody voting no?
Yeah.
There are 5 no votes.
5 no, sorry.
We're not recording the vote tallies, it's just a matter of yes or no.
Right.
So once we see there are yeses or that one side carries, then we can move on.
No, but I think I would like to hear what the votes are.
Okay, well.
Well, then we can record names then.
Well, let's keep it, okay, I get it.
We are 40 minutes in.
We didn't do that the last time, we're not gonna do it this time. Let's just keep it moving, okay, everybody? Topic 3, allow manufacturing uses to locate in commercial zones. So, this zoning text amendment is revamping, sorry, one second. Expanding opportunities for small-scale clean production. So currently, commercial districts permit a limited range of production uses, but exclude many kinds of production that are appropriate to locate in storefront or office settings. The issue is that maker businesses rely on retail foot traffic or prefer to locate near customers are only permitted in less accessible industrial areas. This proposal would allow small-scale, quote-unquote, clean production businesses in storefronts and office buildings, limited to 5,000 square feet in C1, C2, and limited to 10,000 square feet on the ground in C4 through C7 districts. And the use is subject to quote unquote ABC and quote right to know, close quote, environmental standards to ensure that they are appropriate to locate near residents and other businesses. I'm gonna make a motion. Oh, okay, go ahead. Anybody gonna make a motion? Move to approve. Okay, you wanna speak to it?
I think this is a particularly helpful, proposal among the ones that the whole group, seems to be very reasonable and, useful to the retail and manufacturing, and, I see no particular reason not to.
Okay, anybody else, Sherry?
I oppose it. I think originally there were restrictions placed in certain areas. There was reason behind it, so why would we want to change it now? So
Okay, anybody from this side? Okay,
Get one hand up on.
online. Alita?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, let Alita and then you can ask a question. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just looking at what George Janes wrote, which is that it might change neighborhoods by eliminating some of the retail uses that residents need and want. It could deaden streets by having manufacturing there. We pay a lot to live in the city. We deserve a retail environment that caters to individual needs within individual communities. And so I therefore oppose this because I like to see a retail environment in our street. And I'm sure that there are ways of putting manufacturing in, but this isn't a one size fits all the way to do it. Thank you.
Okay, Sahar, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you if you can answer that. What were the restrictions before? Like we're talking about that there were restrictions and I kind of opening it more. So what were before?
So manufacturing uses are almost always, you have to put them in M zones. M is for manufacturing. So if you're making something, with some very minor exceptions, like certain tailoring and shoemaking you can do if you're serving the community, you can do that in a commercial district. But most manufacturing has to happen in manufacturing zones. And you know, the one thing I think needs to be clarified, because this is not clear in the city planning materials, is that there is no requirement for a retail component. So this could be, you know, a tool and die shop or metal manufacturer take over storefronts and produce products that have nothing to do and not serve the neighborhood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Marco?
The traditional lot in New York City and in our community is 25 by 100, so it's 2,500 square feet. And they want to expand, the only way that I perceive is you have to start breaking down the firewalls of the buildings. In these kind of buildings, you cannot do that because they create a fire hazard condition. So to expand to 10,000 or 5,000 square feet is wrong.
Okay, Elizabeth?
This to me is one about market economics. You're never going to put a manufacturing operation in a storefront unless the economics of renting a retail storefront make tremendous sense economically. So the kinds of manufacturing that we might see, manufacturing or production, that we might see in a high retail rental environment are things like a small scale craft brewery, which I think people would be thrilled to have as part of the neighborhood community. Or they would like their local bakery to have the ability to actually bake on premises to the scale that they need to bake on premises. And I don't think anybody is going to pay the rent for a ground floor commercial space in a residential district and not have a retail component. There are many other places, purely commercial districts, where office space is, you know, going for much lower rates, frankly. There are much more cost-effective solutions for businesses that don't have a retail component. And the kinds of businesses that do have a retail component are kinds of businesses that our neighbors would like to have.
Okay, Craig.
Well, I was just gonna say, in order to bridge the gap here, since it seems to be that the issue is whether there is a retail component or not, can we actually perhaps consider in our resolution saying that we would support this, but with a retail component, so this way there is that.
We need a modification. This doesn't say for ground floor storefront. The proposal is to put manufacturing or production in a commercial district. There's lots of non-retail commercial space in a commercial district.
Well, we can say
So,
first floor.
I think there could be a modification that if it's taking a ground floor storefront, it should have a retail component. But if it's not taking a storefront, it doesn't need one.
Okay, is that Peggy?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that we've already had breweries in our community and nobody has objected. People have been very happy about it. Been a lot of fun and been attractive to neighbors.
Right, but I think there's a retail component within that.
And
Yes,
it's ground floor. It's not
Yeah.
a problem. I'm just reinforcing the point.
All right, so is that the motion where yes, as long as it's on the ground floor and it has a retail component?
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Does
it's
it
a
have-
yes, but if it's on a ground floor,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
should have a
Okay.
retail component.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to say that it has to be on a ground floor.
No.
Oh, I do.
Valerie, I don't think it should say that it has to be on a ground floor.
Changed it.
No, I think it doesn't say that. It's saying if it's on a ground floor. It could be on the second floor, then it doesn't have to have a retail component, but if it is on the first floor, then it has to have it. I think that's what we're saying. That's what we're gonna vote on.
Yeah.
Judy? Okay, all right, let's call the question. Yes?
And those online, remember?
I think I'm getting 27 yeses, but it passes.
Did you count the ones online?
Yes, including the ones up. It passes.
Okay. Topic number 4,
It passed, it was yes.
yes, it's a yes. It's a yes with the stipulations that we talked about.
How many yeses were there?
27.
Okay. Proposal 4, which is the modernization of the loading dock rule, so buildings can adapt over time. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, everybody can read it. Does anybody want to start off the discussion? Is there a yes on the floor, or is there a no? Alita?
I'd like to make a motion to disapprove, and if seconded, I'll speak to it.
Second.
Go ahead.
I oppose this because I don't understand how it fits in with the whole purpose, stated ancillary purpose of congestion pricing, which is to eliminate congestion. If you need a loading dock to get rid of a loading dock and put the trucks on the street, I mean, this again is an instance where there are so many provisions that should work together but don't. Because how does this work with micro distribution, where companies like Amazon want to maybe use storefronts and distribute their goods, but yet they don't have a loading dock? So where are they going to do it? In the street. So I don't understand how any of this works together. And since I don't understand how it works together, I'm just going to vote no, because it seems to be adding congestion and adding to the problem. Thank you.
Anybody else? There's a motion of no. Go ahead, Judy. Okay.
It's a motion to disapprove.
Yeah, it's a motion to disapprove. So this is a no on loading docks.
So online, if you are in favor of the motion, green check. Against the motion, red X.
So hands up for the yes to the
To
no.
the
Disapprove.
Yes to the no.
Starting from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
If you're from the public, please don't vote. Sorry.
22, 23.
You have 8 online.
25, 26, 27, 29. No, so.
We're happy you're here from the public, but for voting purposes, I'm sorry, we have to exclude you, but appreciate your vote nonetheless. Okay, topic number 5, allow commercial uses above the ground floor in mixed buildings, with a very nice chart. Anybody have a motion? Michelle?
A motion to disapprove, the second, I'll speak to it.
Okay.
Second.
Speak.
Okay, this whole concept of commercial activity on upper floors in residential buildings is just, I don't know where this came from. This is people just trying to make changes for its own sake. And just because the zoning resolution is old, doesn't make it totally obsolete. This causes to have, you could have a nail salon next to a residential apartment. You could have a barber, you could have a shoemaker. You could have a lot of businesses intermingled between apartments, including agriculture, which we discussed last time. Taking, and I don't mean people's potted plants. I mean agriculture, which would lead to moisture, mold, heaviness of soil, water, bugs, vermin, all kinds of
Okay, we
things.
get it.
And so if somebody is in a residential building, they also have a right to security and a right to privacy. And a commercial entity in the midst of the apartments permits entry from people that are not residents of the building and with no particular clearance. I think this is a terrible idea, and in fact, and here the city of Yes is trying to provide more apartments and more housing. So why they would be willing to give residential units away to commercial lies in the face of the rest of their mission.
Appreciate
So
that.
for me, it's a no.
Okay, Judy? Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. Okay. Call the question? Okay.
No resolution.
It's a no resolution, a no to upper floor commercial use.
You did have one hand up.
Oh.
So
Is it?
it's Alita.
Alita already spoke,
Oh,
didn't she?
I'm done.
I'm sorry.
No, this was the last one.
Oh, okay. Alita, do you need to speak to this?
I just want to mention, George, again, his point about it, that neighboring buildings don't have a vote on this, and that it could have a great impact on people who live in neighboring buildings, adjoining windows to a rooftop bar, for instance, and they deserve a say too. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Raising hands to a yes means a no. We're disapproving this.
How many are online?
7, 8, 9.
Okay, so that's, it passes.
Okay, so it's a resounding no to upper floor commercial.
31.
Yeah, okay. Now we're going to the modernization of use and use groups. I think I just want to start out by George, maybe you could just give a little bit of an overlay here of what's happening to the use groups.
Okay, sure. So every use is put into a use group, 1 through 18. We have, 2 residential, 2 community facility, 11 commercial, and then 2 manufacturing. And what this does is it collapses them. There's only 1 residential, there's only, and there will be only 5 commercial and 1 manufacturing. So there's only 10 total use groups. It simplifies and collapses them. Similar to what we were talking about earlier, where we had lots of little buckets, we're gonna have fewer bigger buckets now. And then within the actual individual uses, they get recategorized into one of the use groups. And so we still have all of the detail of individual uses, but they get recategorized into different groups. The way that they're doing this, they're using a federal standard called NAICS, which is a way we categorize different uses. It's, if I were to modernize zoning uses, which need to be modernized, right? They haven't really been touched in any substantial way since they were written in 1961. And they are, the one thing everybody agrees, they are woefully out of date. And so they need to be fixed. And this is a relatively, in my opinion, this is a relatively smart way of fixing it. The complaint that you could have, if you have complaints about it, is that they are categorizing different uses incorrectly, meaning they're taking a heavy use and making it lighter than it should, because they have to go through all 50 pages of uses and give each use a category, and they've done that. But just generally speaking, as opposed to getting into the details, it's a relatively smart way of doing it, and it's a reasonable way of re-examining the uses as we have it in the zoning estimate.
Okay, anybody,
Resolution to pass, yeah.
Sharon's making a resolution to pass the use groups. Second, any discussion?
You have Chuck Warren.
Police?
I just one question, to George's point about how they tried to categorize it and perhaps didn't do the best job. Would we want to weigh in on changing how they're categorizing it or requiring them or suggesting they go back to kind of fine tune the categorization so we could broadly support it, but ask for some additional fine tuning of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's, if you have concerns about the details.
So are you saying a yes, subject to additional information regarding the use group?
I guess I defer to George on whether or not that makes sense, because I don't know enough about the 50 pages to say whether that's something that we should be looking to.
So I've looked at the 50 pages, I have not looked at them really, really closely. I've looked at them going, oh, it's an interesting decision, you know, those types of reactions. I have not looked at them in such a way where I would say, well, I would not recommend this, I would recommend that, like, you know, where should crematoriums go, like what use, like, things like that, I mean, it has to get into that kind of detail, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't done that, right?
Well,
So I can't recommend.
One of the things that George and I spoke about was where would like a lithium battery store go? Like what kind of use would that be? I mean, this is supposed to be a modernization of the zoning code, and this is a use that is coming into being, and yet it's not addressed anywhere in the city of Yes. And, well, in our opinion, perhaps, yes, but it's not really covered. So what's the motion? Wait, Chuck wants to speak too. Let Chuck talk.
And then Anthony also.
Okay.
No, I'd just like to call a question.
I think we need more discussion on this when we don't even have the details.
I don't think we're gonna get any more details. The use.
So I move to table.
Well, we can't. There's already a motion on, well, Sharon. I mean.
I don't know why we should have to have a vote or even we don't know anything about it.
Well, I think we are learning about it. Just let's relax for a second. Abraham, go ahead.
Now and time we actually have to publish, maybe we should just look into some of these that are quirky and see if we have any ones that we would propose.
Well, we can take Sherry's motion and say it's a conditional yes based on additional information that we would receive. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And then it's.
You would need somebody then responsible for doing the
Wait.
look and doing the evaluation.
George? Well, I mean, what I want to say is maybe we could give George some guidance about what uses we're interested in, and then he can tell us where they fit. Is that?
Direction would be nice.
I mean, is there any, like, I'm concerned about this lithium battery use and where that would go. So if you could take a look at that, that would be helpful. Does anybody have any other area that they might be concerned about?
Labs.
Cannabis.
Yes,
Labs.
labs.
Cannabis.
Cannabis.
The other question I have is about shelters and safe havens, because we've actually in the past been dealt with this issue, the fact that we had a proposal for one in our district, and we weren't sure if the zoning board was right. In this area that it was outdated, so I didn't take this opportunity to actually address
That's an excellent.
Just remind everybody, when everybody's talking, it's really hard for everybody online to hear, so everybody just remember, the chair will recognize you, and that's when you should speak.
Well, I did not hear anything Russell said.
Russell, can you please
Yeah, so
repeat
the
yourself?
questions or the focus areas I have with laboratories, because offices and laboratories are grouped together, memo. And then also, shelters and safe havens, uses like that, because there was a question of, you know, whether they were appropriately in hotel zoning or what the zoning should be, and maybe it's an area that should be updated, and whether it actually has been updated as part of this process.
Okay, I think that's a good inquiry. Anybody else? Sahar?
Yeah, the cannabis agriculture that we were talking about.
Yeah, that's a good one. Where would that go? Anybody else? Michelle?
Let me just clarify, if this comes into being, then this is all as of right, correct? which means that nothing necessarily comes to the community for approval or not. And while this seems like, oh, well, yeah, sure, better just a few use groups than many, I think the devil, as in everything in this proposal, is in the details. And just bear in mind that this becomes as of right. So when you're mentioning batteries or shelters or this or that, if this comes to pass, those issues do not come before you anymore. So that's it. They would
Okay.
be allowed.
All right, David, you had a comment?
I don't think Michelle is correct. I mean, these are the uses. We have more uses now, but it's still a question of what's allowed in what zoning district. So I don't think the process is any different. Maybe George can correct me, but just because you have a manufacturing use redefined here doesn't mean we can put manufacturing into a residential district. It's the same process. The uses go with the zoning. If they want to have a variance against the zoning, they come to us.
Okay.
Anthony.
Anthony, last one.
I think Russell made a very good point. I think that, as did Michelle, I think that we need to look carefully at the way in which the uses are being proposed to be combined. The reclassification of uses is something that, if we believe that the Department of City Planning has the interests of all New Yorkers at heart, then we can accept their proposal blindly. Otherwise, I think we have to look long and hard at it. And I don't know myself, I don't know if they've even thought about it long enough. I think the idea of simplifying is very good, but I don't know if the details of this proposal make any sense whatsoever. Lithium batteries, shelters and safe havens, all of these definitions are, all these uses are still sort of up in the air. And my inclination is to vote no, but that's just me.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
Yeah, I have a question. I'll admit, I'm not abstaining or anything. I'm a big spineless jellyfish and just listening. And this is very deep stuff. We're making big changes. Chuck is a land use attorney. George is deep in the weeds on the zoning resolution. Anthony, the architects. It's not my area of expertise. I rely upon my colleagues for this. I've just gotten two separate answers. Chuck, very adamant, says, no, this is not as of right. I look at George, his head is going up and down, it's as of right. For me, voting on this, I need to know, what is the answer? Because those are two fundamentally opposition coming to each other. It's either as of right or it's not, one or the other. And my concern is on this entire proposal, the entire raise just as you will, 80323, if it's still there. All of it is, the purpose of this entire thing is to move it along. If you're a government official, you are tired of getting NIMBY, whatever it may be, you want to say, you want to move stuff along. It's a city of yes, let's roll this along. And there are other proposals, part of this, which does away with the land use review process. That concerns me as an attorney for a variety of reasons, but this stuff, when we're talking about dumping things in buckets and as of right, and having to come to the community board for review, for me, for voting, not to be a pill, but for me, that is a very important issue that needs to be resolved, and I would like to have some clarity, one way or the other on that. I can't be making decisions based on these two juxtaposed positions. Which is it?
All right, so we're redefining the uses.
Right.
And how they can be placed as of right, right? This is all about the as of right placement of this. And you are exactly right, we're expanding where these uses can go. So where we used to have narrow buckets, we're gonna have big buckets. And this discussion right now is all about as of right development. Later on, we're going to be getting into special permits.
So all this that we're talking about, so no disrespect to what Chuck was saying, that it does come to us for review. Is that not correct? This stuff that we redefine, it's as of right, so I know how that goes. As of right, it's, from the housing committee, I know that.
That's
10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Too bad.
This is between developers and the building department, right? This will never come back to you.
Craig?
Yeah, so if you
Thank
could, can you just clarify, so can you give us some examples of specifically what would now be as of right that would come to us typically now that we would not be privy to going forward in terms of this expansion? As a community board, so what do we currently have coming through us that is not as of right, that this proposal would now make as of right and would not be susceptible to?
District.
But it's not districts, these are use groups, not districts.
But it's in zoning, because it's a zoning.
It doesn't remove all restrictions.
That's what I'm.
That's right. Go ahead.
It does not remove all restrictions at all. It's just we're taking individual uses and redefining them, right?
Individual groups, not uses, right?
That's right. Well, uses. So like, let's say, for instance, they have furniture stores, okay, right up there. It says furniture stores use group 10. That can go into C4, C5, C6, or M districts now. All right, after the change, it could go into C1 and C2. So you could have furniture stores, large furniture stores in your neighborhood commercial zone. Right now, you can't do that without some sort of variance or zoning change. The zoning change would come to you, the variance, you would at least see the application from the BSA. That is a change.
But the flip side is that these rules are antiquated and many of these use groups should not necessarily be considered non-conforming and theoretically should not need to.
I would say that you can have a furniture store in a neighborhood residential or retail zone. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, we have a resolution on the floor. It's a yes. The resolution on the floor is a yes, based on conditional yes, with additional answers regarding, shelters and other uses, lithium batteries, et cetera, et cetera. And those were the only categories that we asked. So.
Battery net. It's a hardware store.
Well, it might be considered a hazardous use in the next classification, I don't know, cause. Okay, so if you're voting a conditional yes, as we just said, raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. 1, 22, 23, this passes with 26.
Okay, and,
You got
hands down for a second, who's the no? Who are the no's?
Yes, it got it.
Okay. We're pretty much at the end of the first hour. And we've got a bunch more to go. We're skipping over, we did, 7 through 11, 7 through 12.
26.
And so now we're up to topic 13. So it seems like we've moved a long way, but we really haven't. So topic 13 is, permitting auto repair via a special permit. Currently, auto servicing is essentially limited, restricted to industrial areas. But today, exceptions allow for servicing certain parts of a vehicle in a C2 and a C4 district. The proposal is to rationalize and consolidate the range of auto servicing uses into two zoning defined categories, light and heavy vehicle repair and maintenance shops. Heavy repair shops must be registered with the NYS DMV and would be allowed in C8 and M districts. And this, under the new CBS proposal, new light auto servicing uses in C1 through C7 districts would be allowed only to locate by BSA special permit. Anybody on this one? Motion, Michelle?
Yeah, I just want to say in our district, we have, I know one, terrific auto repair shop on 83rd Street. I understand there's another in the 90s. That's between Second and Third Avenue. They have caused no, it's a family business there forever and ever and ever. They have caused no difficulty in the neighborhood. However, they are taking up a very narrow width. It's the width of, I think it's probably an 18-foot brownstone. That's probably the width of it. I'm not so sure about what this permits. So does it talk about width or is it all by special permit, George?
So size is a consideration as part of the special permit, I believe. I think they're supposed to have 7,500 square feet.
How much?
7,500.
Well, that's pretty big. That's very big, and it doesn't talk about frontage, is that correct?
I don't believe it does.
Yeah, even though I hardly support our current automotive shop, I'm not sure I like 7,500 feet with no restriction on the frontage on a residential block, so I'll oppose it.
So are you making a motion to oppose it?
Yep. Well, I spoke first, I don't know how formal it would be.
All right, sorry.
But,
Well,
Michelle already seconded it, so okay.
Well, what Elizabeth's, go ahead.
This is a question. Someone define what is light auto repair and what is heavy auto repair?
So heavy auto repair is a auto repair shop where you need a license from New York State. Light auto repair is everything else.
What defines needing a license from New York State? I appreciate that, but that is a technical answer, but it's not an informative one.
Well, it is the answer, it is exactly how it's written in the zoning. So like, I can do it by example. So if you're doing like mirror repair or tires, things that don't involve, I think it's like essentially the engine, that's like things that involve lubricants and engines, that would be heavy. But essentially all the accoutrements, tires, mirrors, that would be light.
I thought it had to do with the size of the vehicle, like big trucks and buses.
No, it's actually the license.
Okay, anybody else? Russell?
Yeah, so one of the comments that we got from a number of people at the last work that we did was people were concerned that we were losing auto repair facilities because it's very hard to find auto repair facilities in the city. And so this would this proposal would ameliorate that issue. The other thing is, I think, we're sort of looking ahead towards eventual transition to electric vehicles. And I think that's going to require charging stations. And I think, this kind of a change is going to be easier for people to site, charging stations or sort of charging equivalent of a gas station. So that, that's the reason why.
George, you want to respond to that?
Just point of information, the last zoning text amendment allowed electric vehicle charging stations in all commercial districts as well.
By auto repair.
Okay, Judy?
Well, my thought was, I don't know where gas stations are allowed,
So gas stations are currently allowed in C8 and M districts. They can be placed via another BSA special permit in commercial districts. They're actually expanding it as part of this to go into neighborhood commercial districts as well within special permit.
gas stations do auto repair. So how, I don't understand how this voting yes or no on this would affect the gas station.
Well, not all of them do auto
Wait,
repair.
Michelle.
It's easier to locate a gas station.
It makes it easier to locate a new gas station.
It does.
Michelle, do you have a question?
No, I was gonna clarify that not all gas stations do auto repair.
I feel I have a question. Go ahead,
Okay.
Elizabeth.
So if this proposed text allows uses to locate in most commercial districts with a BSA special permit, don't BSA special permits have to come before the community board? It's great. So this is a proposal to bring proposed uses to the community board for our advisory approval or denial. I say we should support this.
But we have a negative, should we just vote?
Okay, let Billy speak. He hasn't, and then we're,
Calling the question.
yes.
So, George, I was just wondering, I mean, isn't this proposal kind of at odds with the board's interest in rezoning some of the C and M districts to residential? I think we even have specific examples where the facilities are already either auto repair or maybe they're storage. Isn't that at odds with our interest in more housing and more residential in the district?
Right now, the C8 and M districts are the places where filling stations, gas stations can locate as of right now. I don't know if it's necessarily contrary to it. I mean, it is essentially, you know, a pathway to use land that could be used for commercial or mixed buildings, meaning with residential, for automotive uses, for sure. But I'm not sure it necessarily conflicts with your other efforts.
Okay,
Question.
go ahead.
The question. My concern is the expansion of the frontage. So when you say it will come before us, or no? In other words, if this is passed, it's automatically assumed that there's no frontage limit and that it could be 7,500 square feet, up to or minimum, or that's what they are, or
I
what?
believe it's a minimum of that size. I would say, you know, there are conditions, right? BSA special permit, they have to make findings, right? And they have to, you know, it has to be good design, so you essentially have somebody looking over their shoulder. Make certain that the design is consistent with the character of the street. So there are certain protections in place, it's not as of right. So there will be some sort of design review that fits the conditions of the special permit.
Okay, go ahead, Sommer.
Just a small question, just looking at the
Okay.
picture. Can I ask a question? So I'm just asking that, like, looking at the picture and having something similar is what we're proposing or is being proposed. So the 7,500 that you're mentioning, that would include the inside that facility, right? But you could see that there are cars and trucks that are coming in for that repair, coming outside, so.
That's lot size, 7,500 square feet lot.
Yeah, so it would be like everything is inclusive, it's not like taking up more space.
Okay, we're gonna take a question from the public, Will Vandervalk, and then we're gonna wrap this up. Go ahead, Will.
Look for prompt on your screen, Tony. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to ask, what item are we on? Because I have a comment.
We're on 13.
Topic 13.
Okay, no comment, thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, go ahead, Barbara. Call the question. Okay, so this is a yes?
No, it's a no.
It's a no. So you're voting to no.
To disapprove.
To disapprove.
Yes means no. Okay.
Yes,
Yes
yes means no. So anybody voting yes?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Just
10.
5 of them.
Yeah, I got it. So 10 yeses, so let's count the no's now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it is not even close, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.
Okay, so, yeah.
I got it.
So essentially, we're gonna count this as a yes for purposes of the resolution, that we are in favor of permitting the auto repair via the special permit. Okay, now, number 14, my favorite, micro distribution facilities, explicitly permitting micro distribution facilities. This was discussed in the transportation committee, to know, go ahead, Craig, do you want to just say, just give a little.
It's a 16, Valerie, right?
No,
14.
14.
It's a typo on the agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking on.
Oh, it is a typo.
Okay. it's a
Thank you.
different- Okay.
Okay, 14.
It's 14.
I think I know where that-
On the sheet.
Yeah. So this proposal would allow ground floor retail locations to permit micro distribution centers. So essentially for those delivery companies that we see that are performing warehousing on the street where the trucks are parked in the traffic lane quite often and doing the unloading and then sending out people via carts or whatever into the neighborhoods to deliver goods, companies would have the ability to use some ground floor retail space to be able to rent it out and create these micro distribution centers, which would allow that warehousing activity to take place inside. So yes, the trucks would still have to unload the goods, but instead of then sorting it out on the sidewalks and taking up the space for a while, theoretically, this would now be occurring on the inside of the retail space.
Right.
The flip side of that, as we discussed at the transportation committee, is that these would not be retail spaces that would be open to the public. So they would be those blank spaces that would not necessarily be productive in terms of a commercial retail environment. And it's the competing use question that exists. I don't know, George, if you want to expand beyond that.
I think that was good. I mean, the only thing is to say that the Department of Buildings is currently permitting it under a building bulletin, and this kind of formalizes something similar to what the building department is doing.
Okay, Alita?
Thank you. This will change the context of neighborhoods. I think there are comments about how something like this would have an effect on Madison Avenue, for instance, on other areas around the city that have a special character. It will become a warehouse. It will lead to traffic. There's no indication that it will stop or slow down the congestion that we're seeing from Fresh Direct and Amazon and the like. I think anything that neutralizes neighborhood fabric is a bad proposal for New York. Again, the one size fits all, the trying to do all of this in one fell swoop without enough time for communities to look at this and evaluate it, to treat all communities as identical. And this applies not just to 14, but to not just to this, but to other ones that are not looking at what communities are like and not looking at the unintended consequences. We don't know what's going to happen, except that it will blacken out storefronts. It won't improve life on the streets. And we need, as there are so many retail vacancies, and I know that might make an argument for why this should be done, but as there are so many retail vacancies, what we want to do is encourage retail, which is supposed to be the whole purpose behind the City of Yes business, is to encourage small businesses, including retail. But I'm really concerned that this will have a devastating effect on street life and on the retail environment in our community. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Lo, we're gonna just hear from the public and then we'll go back to the board. Go ahead.
Lo Vanderwall, unmute. There you go. Lo, just hit unmute.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Lo Vandervalk, speaking on behalf of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We're very concerned about this provision. As Alita alluded, this could have a very substantial impact on neighborhood character. And I want to say something more broadly, and that is that Madison Avenue, the Madison Avenue Special District, which goes for 12 blocks in Carnegie Hill, it's a special district. It was formed in 1973 at the same time that two tiny historic districts were formed. It was done by the City Planning Commission, and it was done sort of in lieu of expanding the historic districts all the way on Madison Avenue. And the Madison Avenue Special District was therefore created to preserve special neighborhood character. And I think that the impact of many of these provisions, so I'm not just talking to topic 14, but also many others, will have a profound impact on the character of Madison Avenue, which we think is important, contributes to the city, and should be preserved as much as possible. we understand, we want to go along with many of the changes that are being proposed, but we want to be careful about the impacts and I agree with what Alita said. We're going very fast. It's very hard to see what the implications are. And so I'm putting in two plugs, one for the specific provisions such as the micro distribution facilities, and the other for preserving the character of the Madison Avenue special district. And I don't know how that, because the City Planning Commission wants to eliminate all special districts. I don't know how that can be solved, but we think this is an item that should be flagged and that there needs to be a better solution for the issues raised by eliminating the special district.
Russell?
Yeah, so I think, Greg's point about trying to get the, basically de facto distribution centers off the sidewalk and off the street, I think is a good one, but I also think Lo's point is also very compelling. So it seems to me that we should say yes, but with conditions as to limiting where we want these things to be. And so one restriction I think should do is to say we don't want to have these things in the Madison Avenue Special District. But in other places.
The Madison Avenue zoning already tightly restricts what even stores can go in Madison Avenue.
So that's consistent with.
Well,
George.
let George respond.
That will change.
That's gonna change.
So with the Madison Avenue Special District where.
So part of this is changing Madison Avenue and taking away all of those ground floor protections and replacing it with the standard ones.
But even the special district which says that only luxury retailers and all that.
That is one of the proposals.
Are we overridden by this?
Yeah.
That is one of the, so what Lo was saying, they're not getting rid of the special districts, but 400 pages of this are changes to the special districts, all over the city. And generally speaking, they're making them much more generic and getting rid of all the quirks, or most of the quirks. And so one of the quirks is ground floor restrictions on Madison Avenue. So all of those ground floor restrictions on Madison Avenue would go away, and they would be replaced by the generic streetscape rules that we reviewed last month.
Okay.
So yeah, so to that end, so I think it's always better to be more specific anyway, but I think given that, I should say that we don't want it on Madison Avenue. I think we could say we don't want these on side streets, it would have to be on avenues, like if people have other ideas for sort of restrictions like that, that makes sense, but I don't think we should say no to this entirely again, because you have basically people will just put their pallets on the sidewalk and take it over. And I think this would actually address that and solve that issue.
Judy?
Yeah, well, I have to say, we had two of them in the sixties that worked very well while they were there. I don't know, their businesses must have, because they weren't. But, does this proposal mean that they can put it in any one of the zoning districts? What does, this doesn't say where.
Any commercial zone.
Any commercial.
Oh, only commercials.
And it differentiates between how much square footage can be in each zone. In C1 and C2, it's 2,500, 5,000, and then in C4 through C7, it's 5,000 on the ground floors and 10,000 above.
That's Madison Avenue.
Madison Avenue is a C5, so they could have the 5,000 square feet on the ground floor.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion? Ed?
I would like to make a motion to disapprove if it's seconded,
Second.
because I know from just practical life on the street down out there, it's Thunderdome. I'll say it again. It is Thunderdome on Third Avenue. It is true. It's just like the bike lane. You give them a bike lane, they're riding on the sidewalk. You just open this up, it's just gonna be them spread out. Anybody come to my house? You can look out on Third Avenue. You can watch it. It is absolute Armageddon out there with these folks. They take whatever they want to do. The NYPD, I don't know, I think the Traffic Enforcement Division has disappeared. So it'll
Okay,
be just
can
wide
I
open.
make
Say
a
no.
recommendation? If no is the motion, can we do what we did at the last meeting where we start out with a no? But if you override our no, then we want at least an exception for Madison Avenue and, you know, side streets, et cetera. Does that, would you?
Yes, I second.
Say no.
I'll say no.
Yes.
Say no.
I would say fit Madison or and side streets.
Okay, but I think we have to recognize that, you know, we can make it a conditional no, so that if we do get overridden, at least our suggestion will be, yeah,
And
Rebecca.
then also we could pull out the special districts in our neighborhood, but maybe we extend it to all special districts as well.
Okay,
I would support that.
okay, so is that okay, Ed?
Yeah.
A no,
Anticipation,
yes,
aren't they trying to eliminate all special districts?
They're not eliminating them, they're keeping them, but they are changing them and they're making them more generic. Many of them, I don't wanna say all of them, but there's like 400 pages worth of changes in the special districts. It's substantial.
So they're basically going to change all of these special districts. But not all of them 100%.
That's right, we went through this, and some of them, they changed not at all, others they changed a little, and others they changed a lot. And it's really, there's, I can't tell you the rhyme or reason for it.
I have a point of information.
Sure.
Are these micro distribution centers in the like of like the getter places that you see? Because I would add to in sort of the no, but recommendations, I would say we want provisions to prevent overcrowding in front of these places and certain standards to make sure that, you know, they're not just like, you know, we're not just looking at refrigerators when we walk by them.
Point of information,
go ahead.
does this mean that will eliminate the street distribution box?
No, it's just encouraging if you go inside.
It encourages them to go inside.
Right, so it will eliminate the street, so that will help. with the-
We would say that for years.
Okay, Michelle?
I just want to add, correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, but Matt Bauer was at our transportation meeting. He's the president of the Madison Avenue bid, and he was opposed to this, that I'm reporting that correctly, I think. But aside from that, this proposal, number one, recognizing you go to the second floor as well. It's not only street frontage. So, and to my mind, if you picture it, in no way does it guarantee that you won't have trucks lined up. There's nothing in here that says that there's gonna be a person out there monitoring, that
Okay,
there's gonna be timing or anything like that.
okay,
I recognize the problem, but I don't think it solves it.
okay, do you wanna,
Call the question.
all right. So what we're voting on is a no. It's a no with a not a modification, but just a recommendation that if it's not a no,
That
I'll vote against.
It's his resolution, he's not accepting.
Okay.
No, I'm not gonna stand in the way of progress. I'm not gonna vote for it. I'll vote against that. But I'm for no, because exactly that, there is no guarantee that this stops any of what's going on out on the street. But it's okay, you can modify it. I'll just vote against it. But I don't care. I'm not hung up on it. I'm gonna bog this down. I have no problem with it. You can modify it all you want. I'll vote against it. I'll straight no.
okay, well then, the motion on the floor is
The no, we'll modify if the no fails, then the yes is right?
he's saying his resolution is a no, so that's what we're voting on.
Okay.
Okay, if everybody wants to vote for a straight no,
So, okay, everybody on Zoom, I'm gonna put hands down. This is a straight no, so if you were in favor of a straight no, green check. Otherwise, red X.
Many are on Zoom.
There's still 9, I believe.
No, I'm saying, okay, so we're at 13 for now. 14 for now.
So we should probably take
No's for this,
How many?
Did the no pass?
there's only 14, so we should take the other ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
what, were you a no, Rebecca?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I thought you were calling.
Lindsay?
Right.
15, and so who's in favor of the no,
Of the yes,
of the yes?
with the modification.
Yes with conditions.
Yes.
with conditions.
With conditions.
I honestly think it's stronger to say no.
Otherwise, we have to put another vote on the floor.
I
I
don't,
would like to move to say yes with conditions.
Yes.
okay, then go ahead, maybe,
I'd like to add one other condition on top of the ones we said, which is what Michelle was just concerned about, the lining of the trucks. Say that one of the conditions also, an additional condition is that the city has to do something to prevent trucks and whatever using these micro distribution facilities from lining up on the sidewalk. Seriously.
okay, so then the vote on the floor is yes with conditions. And the conditions are, city taking measures with respect to double parking and distribution that's happening on the street.
Certain sidewalks.
Sidewalks, not in the special districts that exist today.
Or
Not on that's part.
Madison Park and all sides.
And should these then be added to that?
And
Any special districts.
And everybody on Zoom, we're gonna repeat this.
all special districts.
And all special districts, okay.
Even fun.
And there's,
RC, et cetera.
I think that sounds like a no, but okay, but.
Yes.
What about reduction in noise mitigation? Or noise mitigation?
What, why is there less noise?
Traffic. Well, if you're living above it, you're gonna be concerned about the noise that's happening below you.
If anything above a restaurant, you're gonna be concerned
And there are
about.
no hours.
So.
Okay,
Could we add something about like making sure that there's no blackout, like it's not just an empty or industrial.
There's a solution to
Do you
this.
want to add hours, Valerie? Because this could be 24 hours, there's no hours.
We've been talking about this for years.
okay, I mean, we could go on and on here, so it's yes.
That's why I think a straight no is
Call
best.
the question.
All right, call the question, who's yes?
Let's repeat it just so that everybody online knows.
And here too.
So,
Or Russell, do you want to stand up and repeat all?
Okay, well, yeah, I'll tell you what I think it is, Valerie, correct, but so it's a yes with conditions which are not on side streets, not on Park, Madison or Fifth, not on any special districts. Not that they have to do something to prevent trucks and stuff from lining in front of the distribution center and actually enforce, preventing that. And I think.
What about business hours?
Business, yeah.
I mean, that wasn't one of the ones that.
Okay.
I don't want to do more on that. but-
okay, that's the motion on the floor, who's a yes?
And again, green check for yes, red X for no. You have 4 yeses online.
That looks like 19.
You have 5 X's.
Okay.
So that.
No.
Nose.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes. Take the nose.
Do we keep our hand up?
This is just a no, I thought you were yes. I thought you were a
These are
yes.
no's. Yeah,
No to the
These
yes.
people clear out, it doesn't look like it.
yes, and you have 5 online that were no's.
These are our 5 no's, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we do it again here?
what are we doing?
No.
So that looks like 14.
And 5 online, is that a
No,
tie?
it looks like 14. For this 15 last time, it looks like 14 this time and 19 for Russell's.
So it's a tie.
Are you adding the 5
40
in?
yeses,
I added
19.
5. Yeah.
So
No, so you're adding double 5. Is what you're.
yeah, so it was 19 yes, 14 no, correct?
So it's yes.
Yes, okay, so it's yes with conditions, that's the way it will appear in the resolution. All right, the next topic is the authorization for non-residential uses on large-scale residential campuses. We don't have many of those in our district, but, it's essentially, the proposal says create a CPC authorization that gives NYCHA and other large-scale residential sites the ability to include commercial up to 15,000 square feet, subject to both environmental review and community board approval. And George and I were talking about that. It's not actually approval, it's just advisory recommendation. So. Exactly, but it says approval in the presentation, so it's a little bit misleading. So it's not like they're expanding our power. I just want to make that clear. Rebecca?
I'm against this because they do not have to go through the work.
Because why?
They wouldn't have to go through Euler. Abraham?
I just wanted to ask George, it would not create environmental concern and the traffic, would that be formal, like, impact statements or assessments?
So an authorization is a discretionary action that has to have environmental review. I will say, however, that something this small would probably be what they say neg deck, that negative declaration that would not require any mitigation.
I'd like to
Yes,
ask
sure.
a question.
Sharon?
I'm a little bit confused about this because several NYCHA campuses already have small supermarkets. I mean, this is a NYCHA complex here on 21st Street in Queens. I mean, it has a pharmacy there. So I'm confused as these uses are already allowed. I don't understand why we're.
They're only allowed if they have a commercial overlay or if they're pre-existing grandfather, they're essentially grandfathered.
Okay. Thank you.
Who's on?
You have Alita and then Anthony.
Anthony.
Okay.
Actually, I think Alita preceded me, but, normally, I think this, for our district, I think this would, not be a bad idea. I am suspicious of a lowered level of, oversight and approval in the same way that, I'm concerned about all of the other ones, all the other proposals that have, basically rely on enforcement, and I think, as we all know, in Community District 8, enforcement is essentially non-existent. And I think that I'm concerned about the breadth of the scope of this proposal. Obviously, in places that are in a flood zone, like our NYCHA campuses, we would, in fact, you're not supposed to have residential uses on the ground floor. And in a way, that would be a good thing. I'm just concerned about the application of this willy-nilly across the entire city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alita?
Thank you. I echo Anthony, and then just say in a blanket statement that anything that removes the ability of city council members or community boards to weigh in, for me, is a blanket no. I don't know what's going on. There are other ways of helping small businesses besides the sweeping changes proposed in this whole City of Yes proposal that has limited looking at unintended consequences or even intended consequences. We have 59 neighborhoods, 51 if you only look at city council members, and they're given all short shrift with, again, these sweeping changes without the opportunity for communities to have input. We choose where we live, but it's all being wiped out by these changes. So I oppose all of the remaining changes on the basis of a lack of community input, a lack of city council, and anything that takes away an environmental review also is a no, because again, it's one of the policies of congestion pricing. So how does taking away environmental review fit with all of that? There is such an inconsistency to what the city is trying to do that I just can't help being very skeptical. Thank you.
Okay, Andrea?
Yes, I would oppose this definitely, especially when it comes down to dealing with NYCHA campuses. When we had to face the infill proposal many years ago, although this is a different dynamic, there was no studies done. There was no psychological impact. It was just, they were on override the ULA process, and it wasn't coming before the community board. And the people needs to have a say. The campuses are designed the way they're designed, with the trees, with the playgrounds and everything like that. But when you want to take away a piece of the land or part of the landscape, it impacts the people. And I definitely wouldn't oppose it.
Wilma?
This particular thing will not take place because you have to have a real process. And you're saying with this proposal that this does not have to be a real process. We need a real process in order to have Anything that think of infrastructure needs to be dealt with people.
Does anybody have a contrasting point? Otherwise, I'd like to entertain a motion. Peggy?
Yeah, it's Andrea's comment was a motion to disapprove. I'll second that.
Yeah.
Okay, motion on the floor to disapprove. Call the question. A yes is a no. So everybody in favor of turning it down? That's pretty much.
34, yes.
So we do not support that proposal. Okay, topic 16 is the authorizations for corner stores. Currently, a commercial use cannot be placed in a residential district without a pre-existing non-conforming use or variance. The proposed zoning text amendment adds a city planning commission authorization for stores and offices on corner lots in residential districts that are no more than 2,500 square feet of retail, service, or office use on a corner lot. I think it's very informative. If you look at George's memorandum and he shows you the Church of the Heavenly Rest and what's happening there, so you can see what the impact is in our neighborhood. Comments, Rebecca?
Making the same comment. I'm against it because it doesn't have any.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm against it for the same reason I was against the prior.
Okay.
It doesn't go through.
Anybody else? George, Brad?
Yeah, I just want to speak in the negative. Check, this proposal was created for a problem in Staten Island. I don't think people in our neighborhood have a problem finding corner stores, so there may be one or two businesses like operating legally, using this type of use, but I think to have business on corners with trucks operating and making deliveries, especially at crosswalks, I don't think this is a problem for Manhattan, particularly our neighborhood.
Okay, George, did you want to speak to it briefly?
So they've been saying that this is for Staten Island, which has a lot of residential districts, but I think the Church of the Heavenly Rest is a great example of where it will be used in Manhattan. So on Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, Central Park West, 59th Street, these are all residential districts right now. And a lot of them have institutions like the Church of the Heavenly Rest that are land rich but cash poor. And so this is a path forward for them to have commercial uses on site to generate revenue. And I think it actually will happen in Manhattan. I think it will happen in residential districts like Fifth Avenue and Central Park West, where there is, demand for, people to get their coffee when they're walking their dogs in the park, right? It's the Bluestone Cafe there does really great business.
Low on online.
Lou Vanderbilt?
Yes, Lo Vanderbalk speaking, representing Carnegie Hill Neighbors. We are very concerned about this provision and we have to oppose it because it will greatly challenge the existing character of, for example, Fifth Avenue and also the other avenues. But I know the Church of the Heavenly Rest Cafe has been cited. And the interesting thing there is that it is currently prohibited. But the cafe is still there because the enforcement is very weak. And an understanding was reached with the neighbors that they would not abuse that area the way they had earlier. So this is a wonderful example of outlawing things, and through the outlawing process or disallowing process, you create enforcement, because if they get out of line, they can be challenged legally. If you allow this provision, you can't challenge them legally. And you can talk all you want about expanding and overflowing into Fifth Avenue and the neighbors area. And there's nothing you can do about it because there is no enforcement. And you can't even challenge them legally. And the other thing is, think of this. The Jewish Museum has no corner cafe, but it will have to reconsider it if it's allowed, How can you, if you're sitting on the board of the Jewish Museum, not do this when this opportunity is available for you? The same goes for the Guggenheim Museum. I don't know how the Guggenheim would do it, but they're all going to be tempted to take advantage of this. So I think you're opening a Pandora's box. And for that reason, we really have to oppose this. I'm not even talking about the other avenues, such as Park Avenue. There might be some grandfathered situations that could really get you into trouble. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lo. Is there anyone in favor of this provision? Okay, does anyone want to make a motion?
I do.
Abraham?
I was just gonna say, can we just say no, but yes, for Staten Island?
If that's the motion, I like it. If that's what I create
Yes,
that.
but only for Staten Island. You're gonna know you anyways.
Like, we don't want to say yes, we don't want to say one way or the other percent.
Well, I guess, let's just do a no. I mean.
Second, to a no.
Is everyone voting for no?
Yeah, no, yeah, so. We should put our hands up.
Is anyone on the other side?
Well, yes, nobody was.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I just think, for me, like, I think getting spaces and businesses on our streets makes for a more lively streetscape, even if it changes, like, I think change is coming, change is inevitable, and there are some changes we can oppose, and then there are some that we just have to take. And so I think that this is what we take.
Okay.
But that's my opinion.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, no worries.
Okay, all right, Felice.
And just briefly, along with what Addison said, I mean, personally, I love Bluestone Cafe and I love the additional options and it does provide, I'd be thrilled if the Jewish Museum were to open up on the sidewalk as well. I think there are options like that enhance community use, and if it has to come back for board approval or approval, I think that's a positive thing.
But this would be as of right.
Right.
No, this is an authorization. So an authorization is a discretionary action that's done by the CPC.
Okay.
That does not go through Euler. There's no city council. You are asked your opinion on an authorization, but your opinion can be ignored.
What's a comfortable?
But it's without going through Euler. This would not be a Euler.
Right, it's not Euler, but you are asked, so, transit easement, no, that's a certification. And authorization, the most common one are for fresh stores, but we don't have them in this district.
Well, I think the motion on the floor is a no. So everyone who wants to vote no, raise your hand now. How about that?
And that's for everybody online, green checks for no's, red X's for yeses. You do. Rita, do you have like a point of information? Are you confused on the vote?
I counted 29.
Okay, thanks, Rita.
So that's 29 against the proposal. Anybody in favor?
You have Billy on that.
Okay, 3 and Billy. 3, okay. All right, next. All right, so now we're up to 17, which is special permits and authorizations for bulk and use. George, can you give us a little bit of a synopsis here?
Sure. So in commercial and manufacturing zones, sometimes you have uses that do not fit into the bulk envelope easily because of sky exposure plates. Because of sky exposure plates, that means essentially the things that make buildings move to the center of the block, the rules that make buildings move to the center of the block. And so instead of getting a rezoning or a variance, this would be a third way to address that issue. You would go to get an authorization from the City Planning Commission, exactly like the other two authorizations we were talking about, same mechanism. It's not a Euler action. And you would be asked your opinion as a community board, but there is no public hearing at the CPC, and they will make the decision themselves.
Give me an example of both.
So if your coverage or yard or height the shape of the building doesn't meet the requirements of the envelope, you can get this authorization to get a waiver. That doesn't currently exist right now. It is only for commercial or manufacturing buildings. It does not apply to non-residential buildings. Also, you can't get it for FAR. So it's only for the shape of the building, so it's not for more floor area.
Adam?
This is important in our district, while we still have C8-4 zoning, is that the self-storage buildings that currently have all sorts of setbacks potentially go for this and build a uniform tower. The same would be for the Taconic Life Science Building. All of these C8-4 projects, commercial projects, could avail themselves of this option.
Could what?
Avail themselves of this option until they get rezoned.
And is that good?
That would be bad.
And that would be bad in your opinion?
That would be bad.
Okay.
I second his.
Okay, Russ, okay, make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, second.
What was the motion?
To disapprove. I just want to make sure, I just want to give the other side a little, is there anybody who wants to speak in favor of this change? Anybody online?
Anybody online who wants to speak in favor?
Okay, so we're voting, raising your hand means a no to the proposal.
That is a green check is a no to the proposal. Green check, no.
It's 29 in the room and
6 online.
29 and 6.
Mhm.
Okay, so 35.
Okay.
Let's count. 30, 32, 35.
Count?
No.
That's okay. Okay, so we're at the last topic and we're at 8:27. So we're almost at the 2-hour mark. So I want to congratulate everyone on getting here. So let's remember that in the context of this next discussion, which is creating new zoning districts for future mapping. And since George, you started down this road earlier on when we were talking about the Coney Island district, I'd ask that you pick it up.
Sure, they're planning on developing one manufacturing district and one zoning district, or commercial district. To essentially allow for new zoning districts, which they may map in the future. Right now, our manufacturing districts are very lumpy. You go from 2 FAR to 5 FAR to 10 FAR, and there's nothing in between. And this kind of fills in the holes in between. It gives you lots of choices in terms of the density. So in the future, when they're mapping new districts, they will have more choices. The shape of the buildings that are described, they're kind of best described like loft style buildings. High coverage buildings with not a lot of yard requirements, not a lot of setback requirements. And in fact, from the previous one, is that if you met the requirements of the bulk envelope for the C7 district, you would need the authorization, and if you didn't, you would need the special permit. The point being is that this gives more choices for future actions. And to me, I've always felt hamstrung by not having enough choices in zoning districts.
I have a question, which is, well, 2 questions. So first, what's the likelihood essentially that something like this would go in our community district, or where this would sort of affect that? And then go ahead.
I think that would be extraordinarily low, because you don't have any manufacturing districts, and the C7 would be a commercial district that does not permit residential. Residential is the character of the neighborhood. I just don't think that would happen in your district.
Just a perspective of like cost effectiveness, or whether somebody would be sort of incentivized to build something like this, you think that?
I don't think so. I mean, you have like Sotheby's, which is a high density commercial building in your district. You have a couple of one-offs where it might happen, but I just don't, it wouldn't be a very large scale thing.
Michelle?
Is there any height restriction in any of the categories?
There are some, and so it goes from very low density 2 FAR all the way up to 15 FAR. So, and the higher density ones have no height restrictions, they allow for towers. But the lower ones do.
Elizabeth?
Presumably, the rezoning itself to actually implement this new district type would have to go through a rezoning process that will include the community board feedback for whatever location it is proposed for. So therefore, this is simply the creation of a type that does not make that type available anywhere without community board input.
That's right.
Then I have no, I don't think we should have a problem with this.
When they would be mapped, there would be a ULURP.
Any other comments online or?
You have two hands up online, Anthony and then Rita.
Okay, you go first.
Rita?
I just wanted, just for clarification, where would the blood center fit into this? Does this leave this open to more types of buildings like the blood center in the middle of a residential area?
So right now, the blood center, it was rezoned and then got a special use and a special permit for the bulk waivers. The question would be, is that if it had gotten rezoned, would it need the special permit for the bulk waivers? It may have, it may not have, probably would not have needed the special permit for the bulk waivers because it's a very permissive envelope. But it still would have needed a rezoning, and it still would have had to go through ULURP for the rezoning. It may not have needed the special permit safety.
Thank you.
Anthony.
Okay. Sort of piling on, as it were, to what Rita said, but in a slightly, looking at it a slightly different way. I am not in any way reassured by the promise that we get to look at whatever horrible idea is proposed, because looking at blood center as a prime example, we said no. The community in general said no. Our city councilman said no. And the city council as a whole said yes. So I am kind of reflexively opposed to the establishment of zoning districts that don't exist, that aren't mapped, because there is nothing to prevent city planning from creating new C7 districts anywhere a particular developer wants it created. Thank you.
Anybody with any commentary to that, Judy?
I move based on what Anthony said to say no to this one.
David?
I think it's ridiculous to think that city planning just accommodates developers. City planning, I think, acts on behalf of the city as a whole. They make decisions. I have to believe they're made in the best interest of the development of the city. Anyway, I would approve the idea of city planning creating new zones, because it sounds to me as if they would be beneficial.
Okay, so it's, oh, Craig,
Sure.
sorry.
I agree with David. I think that we need to be more flexible in the future and we need to be accommodating to whatever the needs of zoning is going to be as it evolves. And I think if we take a protectionist attitude towards things, we're going to get locked in the future to potential situations that we don't want to get into without additional flexibility. So I would support this and oppose the resolution that is on the floor.
Okay, Sharon?
You know, I would agree with David. However, that does not mean that city planning can't get it wrong. And I think that that's the issue for me. And I also, it leads me into something else, which is, I've decided as a community board member, I'm gonna refuse to participate in this process. And I think at the borough board meetings, there needs to be some pushback that said that there needs to be a pushback in which community boards take a position as a whole and say, look, we're not going to participate in this process. We're not going to vote yes. We're not going to vote no, because we don't have enough information. And, you know, I heard Alita say several times, and at one point I was thinking, whoa, if she says that again. However, I'm really, you know, going through this process, item by item, I'm agreeing with Alita. It's overwhelming. We've been through this twice now, I think under de Blasio, when most of the community boards said no, and look what we got. At this juncture, when we get this type of information that has the depth and the breadth of it, we need to be given, I think, at least more time and information to really go through this as a process, as a whole, to see how it really impacts our community. I just don't think that we have had enough time. Now that I've gone through this step by step, I mean, I don't want to say anything about the votes that we have already taken, but at some point, the community boards as a whole need to say, whoa, wait, stop. Enough is enough. We're not going to take a position one way or the other. They can't do it with us.
I think they can. Unfortunately, I hear what you're saying. I'm happy to pass that along at Borough Board tomorrow as a commentary. I mean, in some ways, not for tonight, but that's like looking at a charter revision to almost give us more power to say we're not advisory and that you need to listen to us. And that when we weigh in on something on ULURP, we actually have a word that counts. So maybe that's the best place for that. I mean,
No, I hear you, and you're right. They actually can do it without us.
Unfortunately,
I'm not sure where that came from.
But no, I think you know, look,
but it popped in there. But I will say this. What I will say is that since they can do it without us, they don't need us to participate in the process. And that's the position that I'm taking. I'm not, listen, this is what the board has, this is a process that the board has built, and I'm going to participate in this process fully. But the next time when something comes up like this, I'm not going to be taking a position because we simply don't have enough information, and it's running roughshod over all of the community boards. And at some point, I think we need to take a stand, and we can do this particularly in Manhattan. I think overall at the borough board meetings, we could certainly do that and tell them, no, I mean, listen, you're gonna come up with this.
well, I mean, look, there's another part to this proposal. City of Yes, housing opportunity. So, I mean, Russell, if you
I
want.
just call the question on the resolution.
Okay.
And that's a no.
I think that's,
Chuck knows.
wait, does Chuck want to?
Yeah.
I don't want to leave Chuck out. Just hold on 1 second. Sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
Chuck, you had your hand up. You have to unmute Chuck. He doesn't want to. Okay. All
You
right.
changed his mind? Okay, so,
Yes.
are we, I think he's gonna call the question, but I wasn't do. Okay, so what's on the floor? Are we voting no? It's a no to the C7 creation of the district. If you're voting no to the proposal, raise your hand.
A no is a green check for those online.
1, 2, 3.
If you are in favor of C7,
7, 8,
do
9, 10,
next.
11, 12, 13, 14. We have 15 yeses. Wait, when they were 16.
We have 5 online.
21.
No, that includes the online.
That includes all 5 online.
16 yeses. And no's?
1, 2, 3 online.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
4.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 4 online. That's 19 yeses that I got. That's the vote failed.
Disapproval vote, correct?
Right, the motion to disapprove
Oh,
failed.
But we're not supposed to say yes.
Wait, oh.
So we're supporting the ability of the CPC to,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you
Yes.
not realize?
I did,
okay, all right.
yes.
We are officially all the way through the 18 proposals. Elizabeth, go ahead.
I'd like to propose that we add an additional recommendation about the Madison Avenue Special District.
Well, I was going to ask along those lines, how are we dealing with those items that are not officially proposals but are overarching, such as special use districts in general? That is a question that I guess I've had, and maybe there are other topics that go beyond just these 18 special use districts that are part of the city of yes proposal that we didn't touch upon. I guess my question is, how are we going to handle that going forward into next week?
Timer is until 9 p.m.
Okay,
We have 2 other things to discuss.
yes.
Are there changes to the law beyond these 18?
I think that just well, George can say it better, but special districts are affected by every proposal.
Right, so when you reviewed the streetscape recommendations, they rolled all of the changes to the special districts into the streetscape recommendations. Because what they're doing is they're taking all of the custom stuff in the special districts, and essentially in almost every place, they are making them standard to follow the statewide standard. And so on Madison Avenue, which has all of these restrictions to make it a shopping street, they are removing all of those restrictions on these other uses to follow the citywide standard, which follow transparency, limiting ground floor residential uses and lobbies and parking. So just to follow those standard.
That's in addition to the 18 proposals, that's another.
Well, yes, they would have said that that's part of the streetscape proposal, because that changes Madison Avenue's streetscape provision.
So yeah, I can't tell why, like, if we already took a position on that proposal, why? Subdivision.
I'm sorry, say again?
If we've already taken a position on the streetscape proposal, why?
Well, that's what I mean, we voted, I agree with you, because we've gone through all of the proposals, and we've taken out the special districts, we've addressed, you know, if people didn't feel that we addressed it appropriately, we've gone through all of them.
I think this is something maybe we should address when we see the resolution based off of our votes on all these 18. Because I think we all have, as you will see, when we see the resolution, we've been very careful about the special districts. And we'll know if we need to have an additional whereas.
Okay, all right, we can do it that way if you want to, it's fine. If you feel we need more protections for the special districts at that point, we can do it when we see the overall resolution. I have to say that, we've gone through it pretty thoroughly, and I've looked at what other boards have done, and they haven't really been this exacting. So I just want to say again, thank you very much for all the time that we put into it. We're not done, because obviously we're going to look at this again next week and vote up or down. But it's definitely an arduous task, and to Sharon's point, let's see where it takes us, because this is only the beginning.
What do you mean vote up and down, up or down?
We are gonna incorporate this into one resolution, okay? And then
With
we're,
all these parts, and you're voting it up and down?
yes, because we're gonna separate them into straight yes, this is what we're voting, and if we have straight yeses on 1, 6, and 7, we resolve that we're in favor of 1, 6, and 7, unconditional yes. We're in favor of these conditionally yes with these modifications. Here are our no's and here are our no's with modifications. So that's the way the entire resolution will look.
That's what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna be complex, right, Russell?
Yeah.
I started doing it already, but
I have the same idea.
cost.
Yeah, just as a matter of curiosity, how much is this gonna affect what they actually will be doing and what they want to do?
Stay tuned.
They're gonna do what they want, so.
Stay tuned. I mean, it's on the day that we're actually having our meeting on the proposal, the city planning commission will be having an all-day hearing on the city of Yes. So if you're really enthusiastic, you can tune in and watch what people are saying. I mean, I think if you've been watching, boards across the city have been, completely thumbs down on the whole. There are certain boards that have come in completely against, mostly in Brooklyn and Queens, but there have been some in New York, in Manhattan, and it's very difficult to tell where the boards are because the way the results are presented, it'll say like conditional yes, but it won't tell you exactly where the particular board had, what they have voted on. But,
I just want to say, at those hearings, you can also testify on your own behalf.
yeah, absolutely.
Can I also address this, just to say,
Sure.
city planning is actually listening to people and for carbon neutrality, there were changes that they made prior to going to city council, or prior to going to the city planning commission, based upon comments that they got. And then after it was at the city planning commission, city council made more. And this has been the pattern recently, is that they have been more amenable to changes. Elevate Transit had changes before, but with CPC, other amendments have had changes when they've heard comments. And when those comments have been good and productive, they've been listening. That hasn't always been the case, but there's been some changes in leadership, and I think that they're actually learning that they can learn from people.
Okay, we have to move the agenda. I just want to say, if you want to hear more from George tomorrow night, he'll be on a webinar from 6 to 7. That's being sponsored by Friends of the Upper East Side and Landmark West. So if you want to think a little bit more about the various proposals and things he's been talking about tonight, you can tune in for more of George on this subject. But I really feel like we have to move the agenda and start talking about the gambling text amendment. And so that's on the floor. This is a proposal. Has everybody taken a look at it? Okay. Do you want to make a motion, Russell? Second. Okay.
You said, can't hear us.
Disapprove. Motion to disapprove.
Do you have specific language or whereases?
Straight no, that's just a no.
I like your style, Russell. It's just a no. Okay.
It was like our district, and we don't want it in our district.
Okay. Does anybody, go ahead, Barbara.
Call the question.
Okay, all, a yes means a no. Everyone who's in favor of a disapproval, raise your hand.
Those online, since we're actually taking a full vote, we should
Yeah.
probably just.
Okay, we're gonna do roll call. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess if there's anybody voting online who's gonna vote against this, raise your actual hand.
What's your actual hand?
Not your actual hand, but your virtual hand, you know what
Which
we're doing. We've been doing this for 4 years almost now.
Against the disapproval.
Yes, just so that we have somebody can voice, because somebody can yell here if they're against acclamation.
Yeah.
Nobody does, so.
Right.
It's an
No
acclamation.
gambling.
Okay, all right, we're against it. So now we move to the budget committee.
Executive.
And we do need to go to executive session, so if.
Can we just give George a big thank you for all
Oh,
the help?
And so if you're a member of the public,
City planning, George, I do.
you need to vacate the room
Thank you for coming.
And that goes
Appreciate
for
it.
everybody online. If you are not a board member, we are going to turn off the live stream and we are going to kick out everybody who's not a board member. You can save me time by leaving on your own.